Hello. In Australia, we mostly speak English and our customs and manners are largely drawn from British traditions. It is similar with our political institutions and legal conventions. The basic principles on which we structure public life have their origins in the historical development of public institutions in Britain. Australia has come to be known as a liberal democracy. Broadly speaking, this means that the Australian system of government includes a commitment to civil liberties, democracy, and the rule of law. Our understanding of civil liberties and political rights lies in ancient English liberties. In 1215, King John was forced to negotiate a power-sharing arrangement with his nobles, confirmed in the Magna Carta, Latin for Great Charter. King John conceded that all his subjects had the right to justice and that there would be no taxation without the agreement of those being taxed. The authority of the king was further constrained when a parliament was called to advise the king. This council of advice evolved into the House of Commons. From these conflicts emerged traditional English civil rights, which are the key principles of Australia's British institutional framework. The monarch cannot govern without Parliament's consent. Parliaments make laws and Parliament represents the people. Also, the absolute separation of church and civil government following the Reformation in the 16th century. There is a separation of powers that ensure a balance of rights and responsibilities. Courts are to be fair and impartial, with all citizens entitled to justice regardless of wealth. If you break the law, you have a right to be judged by your peers, by those equal to you in society. These are the principles which define political and civil structures that are shared with other so-called British settler societies. The right to vote is an essential component of parliamentary democracy. Australia has led the way in the introduction of voting, including the secret ballot and participation in parliamentary institutions. In Britain, all men did not get the vote until 1918, when women had to be over 30 to vote. In the United States of America, white adult men could vote from the middle of the 19th century, but women did not get the vote until 1920. In Australia, the first opportunity to vote came in 1842. Men over 21 who owned property could vote and stand for election, including former convicts. In 1858, following political unrest from gold miners who objected to paying taxes without the vote was given to all men under 21. In 1902, all women over 21 could vote and stand for Parliament. Speaking of gold miners, let's get to the story of the responsible government in Australia. Because Australia was a penal colony, it wasn't considered necessary to extend the traditional British civil liberties. But this was to change when the gold rush brought a huge influx of free settlers. Most importantly, the concept of no taxation without representation was key. The gold diggers were required to pay ever-increasing licence fees, a tax, but had no say in government policy as all authority was held by the governor. This is a famous painting of the Eureka Stockade Rebellion in 1854 and has the text of the Eureka Oath. This is part of Australia's historical narrative where diggers in the goldfields of Ballarat came together to defend their rights and liberties. It is often heralded as the start of the notion of a fair go that remains fundamental to Australia's national identity to this day. Although a short-lived revolt against petty officialdom and a resounding military failure, the Eureka Stockade led to changes in Australia's political landscape. We see the establishment of responsible government in most of the Australian colonies in rapid succession. At first, the colonies had little to do with each other, but in 1872, telegraph linked the colonies, and the idea of being Australian began to be celebrated in songs and poems, and by the 1890s, the idea of federation was becoming more popular. People began to realise that for matters like defence, controlling immigration and the economy, a nation would be stronger than individual colonies. Federation of the 6 colonies in 1901 marks Australia's birth as a nation-state. This is another famous painting, this one by Tom Roberts, of the opening of the first Australian Parliament in Melbourne in 1901 by the Duke of York. It's on display at Parliament House in Canberra on permanent loan from the Royal Collection. Australia's national system of government consists of 2 main parts. Firstly, it is a Westminster system, which was adopted from the British Parliament. The key features of this system are that it is a system of responsible government, that a party requires majority support in order to form government. It includes the doctrine of the separation of powers, which act as a system of checks and balances between the 3 branches of government: the executive, which is the Prime Minister and Cabinet, the legislature, which is the Parliament, and the judiciary, which is the courts. In addition to this, the Australian system of government is also a federal system, which was adopted from the United States of America. In this system, the Senate, the upper house, represents the states. Each state has an equal number of representatives in the Senate, no matter their population size. So the Australian system of government is a mixed system, partially adopted from Britain and partly adopted from America. Along with other liberal democracies, Australia is committed to freedom of the press and equality under the law. And while the Australian Parliament acts independently of the British Parliament, our Constitution also includes the British monarch as our head of state, a feature which has attracted considerable debate over time. The system is certainly not perfect and doesn't always work as expected, with the constitutional crisis of 1975 and the more recent rapid leadership turnovers cases in point. But all in all, with a peaceful handover of power since its inception, Australia is said to be one of the most enduring democracies in the world. I'm Diane Colman. Thanks for watching.